Let's see if someone jumps in. But in the meantime, attention, attention, calling all looters. This is the assignment. Hello, looters. Welcome to the Movie Loot Live. My name is Carlo, and I'll be leading the assignment. The episode where me and a guest will choose the set of categories of what to watch during the current month of February, but it will probably spill into March. That will be our loot. And for that, I'm joined by a great friend, film critic, composer, and fellow podcaster, Brian Skutle. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much, Carlo. It's always great to talk to you. I'm glad to be back on the loo.
It's definitely great to have you here on the show again. Brian joined me about 2 years ago. We opened 2022, I think, talking about silent films, and it
Yep.
was definitely a great conversation. And I always wanted to have you back in some capacity, so I'm glad you were okay to jump in with this challenge. Yeah, I know it was a very last minute. Um, one of those things where I had to turn on the loot signal, so to speak.
Well, I
Break
know
the glass.
I know we've talked about this for a bit as far as me being on the show with this current format, and yeah, I mean
Yeah,
it's funny because of the fact that like right now I'm basically doing more guest podcasting with other people than I am the Sonic Cinema podcast. But I mean, part of that is because I typically have like two or three movies a month that I have to watch, that I have to an episode to watch, and I don't necessarily have that time. So yeah,
don't we all? But before facing the challenge, let's talk a bit about you. Like you said, you are the host of Sonic Cinema, or not the host, because Sonic Cinema is more than a podcast. It's this
yes,
whole website with articles, reviews, videos, the podcast. I've been on three or four of your episodes. I know we did The Godfather, we did documentaries. Last year we did the game, but I think we did
I
another one.
think that I think that is. I think that is it for now. I don't know that we've gotten a fourth one on for you yet. Uh, Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
documentaries,
just
The
those three. Yeah.
Godfather, and The Game. So,
Eh,
but I know we've definitely talked about having you on in the future, and I'm definitely looking forward to those conversations. And yeah, it's always a lot of fun to talk to you. And I will say I haven't had a chance to talk to you since really. Well, wait a minute. No, I did actually, because you we talked about The Game after your John Woo episode on binge movies, and I really
yeah,
loved that episode. It was great. It was great listening to you and Jason talk about those films.
we woo neophytes trashing on on the precious jewels of woo.
Hey, you know what? I mean, I think one of my favorite things about that episode was the fact that like all of your plot descriptions basically went back to the same place, which is fair because that's essentially what he was doing in the 80s.
Yeah, that's
So,
distinct. Yeah,
with the exception of Hard Target, I mean, basically all the movies that you guys talked about have that same basic structure
yeah.
of storytelling. So, but no, I you know me, I love Woo. I mean, I joined David Rose into on piecing it together. We talked about Silent Night. I did
I had to see
basically
that one.
essentially a feature length podcast on Face Off several years ago, and no, I'm a huge fan of his, and yeah, it's always great to
It,
revisit his work.
it
So
was great for me to dive in and enjoy all of those films that I really hadn't seen before. So it's definitely fun. But one of the things that I really like about your show, which you probably can see from the episodes that I've guested, is how diverse it is.
yeah,
All of the things that you cover, and all the different things, like I mentioned, just articles, the podcast videos, all of that. How do you decide what to cover, and what to do if this merits a video or a podcast discussion or just an article? How do you juggle all that for the website?
so I mean, basically, my movie reviews tend to go. I tend to do written reviews for recent movies, especially if it's something that it's theatrical releases coming up. I go to a press screening for it, or I get a screener from PR firm. Or if I'm covering it for a film festival, chances are we'll get a written review from me. Um, Sometimes I don't, if I don't necessarily have a whole lot to say where I feel like I can merit a written review, then I will probably do a quick take video, which is what I call them, on the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. And over the holidays, I talked about Anyone But You, um, Anatomy of a Fall, Past Lives, a lot of movies I was catching up on for the awards. And, and then with film festivals, sometimes I will do quick takes, sometimes I will do written reviews. It just kind of depends on, again, kind of depends on how much I have to say about it. Sometimes I will double dip if I get an opportunity to cover it theatrically, but was in a film festival, or I covered it theatrically and then it's coming out in Blu-ray from one of my contacts. I will do a quick take review. So sometimes you will see me overlap, but I love being able to revisit some of those movies. The podcast, the podcast has never really been about modern movies. It hasn't really been about keeping up with recent releases. Now I have certainly covered newer movies. We've talked about newer movies. Sometimes, time to the home video releases.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like we talked about The Last Jedi, we released that on May the 4th. And, I've also had guests. We've talked about certain filmmakers, certain artists when it comes to films, having to do with a particular film that is out and available at the time. And I have had some filmmaker interviews where I do interview them for talking about their films. But honestly, I've kind of gotten away from that and have been more interested in talking about talking about films that inspired them. And it really came about 5 years ago. Actually, I did a series, Class of '99, where I was basically talking about all basically decided to do a series of episodes. I think I ended up topping around 30 episodes, each one covering a movie from the year 1999, which was, is
Great
widely
year.
considered one of the best contemporary movie years in
Yeah.
history. And so, and at that point, I was really started, in addition to Friends, um, I also was talking to filmmakers about getting them that I've known for years, who I thought would
Yeah.
be interesting to have on and talking about movies in that context. And so I basically from there and then 2020 was weird because obviously movies were not necessarily coming
Yeah.
out because of COVID. Um, from there, it really just became about looking at film history to a large degree and covering certain filmmakers, covering certain films, covering genres or different mediums, like the documentary episode I did with you. And it's really become, if chances are, there are some episodes I will certainly facilitate where if I think of an episode or I think of a subject that would be a great combination with a certain person in my life.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great conversation. To use an example, this past year I talked about John Frankenheimer's Paranoia trilogy
Yeah.
with an actor friend of mine, I talked about a couple of years ago. I talked about three of Alfred Hitchcock's films with uh, Morgan Roberts, and it was great because of the fact that there are other friends I knew I could have talked to about Hitchcock in those films in particular, but I I wanted that particular perspective on it. And so, and then there are other ones where I've kind of, with you when we first talked about having you on the podcast, um, I basically was like, do you have any particular interests? Do you have any subjects that you're kind of interested in talking about?
Yeah.
And we boiled it down to documentaries. And we basically each brought three to the table. And it's not necessarily, I'm not necessarily going to cover six movies an episode. That's a lot of doing, it's a lot of homework. But the fact of the matter is, I wanted to, I want to be able to I want to be able to talk about classic films in a way that my guests are just generally interested in. So if you have a subject that you're interested in, let's hash out, let's see if there's mutual interest there. Like one of my longtime filmmaker friends was back on the podcast last year, Chris Esper. He brought up that John Cassavetes was kind of a blind spot for him. So we talked about John Cassavetes, and it was just it's one of those things where what I love about what the podcast has become, it's not just about me and my friends just talking about nerdy stuff. I mean, there are so many podcasts about that. My interest, and it's occurred to me over the past few years, especially, my interest has been more about exploring film history.
Yeah.
And, not it's not going to be comprehensive, of course, but it's going to be subjects that interest me. Like some of this, like this the first episode this season we did for Sonic Cinema was on Joseph Cotton. And we
I was
talked
gonna
about
mention
some
that
of
because I was listening to it.
we talked about some of his more famous films away from Citizen Kane. I'm gonna have our mutual friend Darren Lundberg on the podcast coming up, and I'm gonna have him and his co-host on there, and we are going to basically talk about films that predate us in terms of age, but that we watched at a time that they kind of stuck because of that. Kind of what Nostalgia Cast
Yeah.
does, but through our personal lens and not just talk about movies that we grew up with from the 80s or 90s. Um, I know I've got one guest who was interested about talking about the Archers, Powell and Pressburger, and I
Okay.
definitely want to do that. Like last year, we talked about I talked about Darren Aronofsky. We talked about Barbara Stanwyck, and it's been fun to really dip my toe into so many different subject matters, some of which I'm more familiar with. Like I was certainly
Yeah.
more familiar with Aronofsky's films than I was most of the films we covered for Stanwyck. But I found that it's been a really great way for me to kind of check off boxes that have been
Yeah.
kind of blind spots for me over the years, and it's really been exciting.
I definitely understand, and I think I follow a more or less similar approach. And it something that maybe we can attest to that in the episode that we had you on, the Silent Loot. We talked quite a bit about Buster Keaton, which you're a big fan of.
Yeah.
Um, and I really hadn't seen. I think I had only seen one film or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It was great before that episode to kind of jump in and watch a couple of his films. I think I had only seen The General.
Yeah.
But then I watched Sherlock Jr. I watched One Week, which I loved. That is probably
Mm-hmm.
my favorite of Keaton. And I watched another one with Fatty Arbuckle,
Yeah.
Rough House, and it was great to cover those blind spots or check those boxes like you mentioned. And it's definitely something that I also aspire to. For example, and something that I'm going to do this year for October, I'm doing an episode. This is a news flash for everybody. I'm doing an episode on Vincent Price. I've seen a couple of Vincent Price, several Vincent Price films, but I already have a guest, which, like you said, is very. He's a big fan of Vincent Price,
Mhm.
and I would like to, again, to use your terminology, dip my toes into more Vincent Price films because he's quite a presence. And
Yeah.
I said, that's perfect for October. Why don't we do the Vincent Price loot? And I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to that. I'm already picking up recommendations of what to watch. So it's definitely interesting. Um,
Has somebody recommend Mask of the Red Death
I've
yet?
seen that. I've seen
From
that.
okay,
Definitely great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've seen a
I
bunch.
love that movie.
Yeah,
I love that movie. It's one of my favorite horror movies.
it's one that definitely sticks out for the use of um, the stage color, set production,
Yeah.
and all that. It's definitely something to behold in that film.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've seen like 5 or 6 of his films, so I've seen a couple.
Hmm.
Um, but definitely we're going to talk a bit more about your podcast and everything else that you do when we get together in our
Yeah.
next episode.
Yeah.
So basically what we'll be doing today is receiving the assignment of what will be our look, choosing the categories of what we'll watch. We're already towards the end of February, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge. Maybe we can spill a bit into March, like I said. I'm not going to be that restrictive, and depending on our respective schedules also, I know it will be tough for me, but once we finish today, we both
Yeah.
will have our assignment, our mission of what to watch during what's left of February and maybe March. um, Brian, uh, eh, to what you were saying, how open are you to watching different types of film, because you already seen the categories, so you know there are a bunch of left field categories in there. Is any category scares you?
Not really. I mean, it's like so many of these categories are just genuinely exciting, and I mean, I just really do. I mean, some of these are very natural for me, like, uh, for example, like a film about football. It's like I've probably seen half a dozen to a dozen movies about football because I love football. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that. And it causes me as much anxiety as much as anything in life. Um, I mean, it's like some of the filmmakers or some of these are filmmakers I'm more familiar with by name than I am by films that I've actually seen of them. Some of them I've seen several movies from. So it's always gonna be one of the things I've been trying to think about in the past week or so since you gave me the list was you know what can I how do I want to approach this as far as the subjects that I want to touch I want to talk about when it comes to these particular categories. It's like, do I want to lean into subjects that kind of fit into uh things that I might be talking about on my podcast, or I basically give myself an easy way to check off a box for my own work, or do I want to do something that's just very much off the beaten path? And I mean, there are so many different ways that that you can go in here, and I love the wide variety of uh subjects here, be categories here, because of the fact that it's not just limited to just filmmakers or actors. It's about different
Themes.
countries
Yeah.
and different milestones. So yeah,
Okay, well, let's see what comes up in the loot then. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so let me just present something quickly so everybody can see what we're choosing from. There we go. That's our monthly challenge chooser tool. Here we have, like I said, like we said, we're gonna choose four films, two films each, four films in total, and then we're gonna randomize the last one, which is gonna make things a bit interesting. You're the guest, so why don't you start with the first one?
Okay. Well, I mean, it is Black History Month, and as such, I do try to fit in movies from African American filmmakers, and so let's go ahead and start with film from an African American director.
Okay, that's great. We have our first category, a film from an African American director. Obviously, like you mentioned, in honor of Black History Month. That's our first category. Okay, so for the second, I'm with you on how to choose the categories, but I'm also trying to make things easier for me because my schedule is a bit hectic. Uh, so I'm going to choose a category that I know I was going to tackle anyway. So I'm going with a film nominated for Best Picture, Best International Feature in the upcoming Oscars. I haven't seen
Okay.
anything, so I definitely need to catch up. So I was thinking of catching up in this last weeks, and there are a couple that I'm definitely looking forward to. Um, I think the one that I'm more interested is Zone of Interest with
Oh man.
from Jonathan Glazer.
Oh,
That is that a good
that is a
try? Or
beast of a movie. That
yeah,
is a beast of a movie, man.
I think
It's a
that's the
heavy
one that I'm
movie.
more interested. Yeah, no, I know I'm expecting that, but I think that's the one I'm more interested. But I'm definitely going. I want to check Oppenheimer. I want to see if I can check Barbie.
Yeah.
Holdovers looks interesting. Looks like something that I might enjoy. So there are a couple that I really want to check.
Yeah. I've seen all I've Zone of Interest was the last Best Picture movie I had not seen, so I've seen all 10 of those, but there are a couple of the international films that I've not seen yet. So I do need to watch those.
Okay, so there we have you have where to go through. So
Yeah.
what's your next category?
So this one is a filmmaker that I've only seen like I think I've only seen one of his films actually. But he's a filmmaker that I know. We've talked about Scorsese in the past. We talked about we talked about him in the Silent Loot episode. He was a huge fan of this filmmaker in his personal journey with Martin Scorsese through American movies documentary, and so I'm going to go with a film from Vincent Minnelli.
Ooh, there we go. I've seen a couple. Let me just refresh my memory how many I've seen because I've seen um, a few, and I've seen Midby in St. Louis and American in Paris. The Bad and the Beautiful is a pretty good one. Um,
Yeah, I think
so
Bad and the Beautiful was the only one I've seen,
okay,
but
I probably have seen it. Oh, Cabin in the Sky. I'm a fan of that one. That's I think that's his first one.
hmm,
Actually, it's a musical. I'm a big fan of that one. Let me see if I've seen. I probably have seen any another one. Just looking at the. No, I think those are the ones that I've seen. But yeah, all of those are recommended definitely.
okay.
Uh, I'll have to see where I go for. I'll see. I'll see what piques my interest. Okay, so for my next one, I'm going with. mm, I have a couple here, but I'm gonna go with one that it's more it seems to be fun, and I'm going with a film set in prehistoric times. Let me see where it is here. A film set in prehistoric times because World Anthropology Day was February 15th. So
Okay.
maybe we can finally see 10,000 BC.
I I I I I've seen it. I
Yeah, I've seen
I
it
don't
too.
necessarily need to see it again, but hey, I mean,
Caveman with Ringo Starr.
oh God,
Was it Ringo
wow.
Starr? I think.
I
I
don't
think
know. I don't know.
it was. It's a '70s or something. I think I saw it. I don't know. I saw it when I was a kid, and it kind of stuck with me. Um, maybe I should revisit that one. What was the one with um, Adam Driver? The one that came
Oh,
out last year.
65,
65. There's another
65.
one.
Yeah,
Prehistoric times. Movie audiences are not that kind with prehistoric movies.
yeah,
We'll see what comes up. It's gonna
yeah.
be fun. Okay, so for our last category, those are our first four categories. We have a film from African American director. We have a film nominated for Best Picture or Best International Feature in the upcoming Oscars. We have a film from Vicente Minelli, and we have a film set in prehistoric times. So those are our first four categories. For the last one, our fifth category, we're gonna use the randomizer, which means we're gonna get a random one, which will come from left field. But before we head that way, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a bit. And while I tinker a bit with this document, why don't you tell us, you're a composer, and you were working on a couple of film scores, one or two film scores, I know. How's that going? Is that something that you plan on keep on doing?
It kind of depends if the opportunity arises. I did have a film score I was working on in 2022. Was for a film, kind of a romantic comedy type thing called Player PhD. That album is available on Bandcamp if you want to take a listen to it. The movie, uh, the movie is a very independent film. It's independently released. It's on a particular streaming site. I'll have to look it up right off the because I don't remember which one it is. It's not one of the major ones. It's an independently run one. But it was a lot of fun. It was my first feature that I had the opportunity to do. I've scored a couple of shorts over the years, and it's with a filmmaker that I've actually known for several years because I'd seen his previous films and really admired his work. And he asked me out of the blue if I was interested in uh, writing a writing a score for him, and it's like, yeah, absolutely. And it was a lot of fun. It was because of the fact that it was more comedic, and most of my scores are typically more so a lot of my music is more serious minded. It was definitely going outside the box for me, but it ended up being a really fun experience. And if the opportunity arises, I definitely like to continue to take it on. Music is something where inspiration kind of has to strike for me at this point. It's not something that I'm working on consistently, like David Rosen is from piecing it together. I'm somebody who, the like I said, the inspiration kind of has to strike me. I'm so sonic cinema and movie reviews, podcasting has become so much of my main love and my main passion. I love writing music, and I'm very proud of what I've been able to do as a composer. But yeah, I mean, it's more of a side interest for me than occupation.
And definitely some of the, I'm going to include all the links that you want to share. You mentioned Bandcamp, or any other link that you want people to share or check out your work. I'm going to definitely include them in the episode description. So
Okay, sounds
anybody that,
good.
yeah, anybody that wants to listen to your music, your film scores, can check them out.
Hmm.
Okay, so we're finally. Let me just share this screen again. There we go. And since you're the guest, what you're going to do is you're going to give me a number from 1 to 21. 1 to 21, any number, and we'll see what the randomizer brings for our fifth and last category.
Let's go with 13.
13. Let's see if it works. Oof, I think that's the most obscure I had. A film from Tracy Deer. I found this female filmmaker when I was looking for filmmakers that were born in February, and she had a few films, and I hadn't seen any. So I think we have Beans from 2020. We have. Uh, I'm checking out her filmography. Oh no, she has a couple, but TV series. Okay, Beans feature film. She has Club Native. She has short Crossing the Line. Mohawk Girls is another film. So there are a few, but
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see what we can find, and we can definitely stay in touch to see. Here I found this here or there, and you
yeah,
can check it out as well. So definitely one of the ones that I included. And I knew, oh, this is a very obscure one, but I also, like you said, I tried to bring a mixed bag of filmmakers to choose from, um, both male, female, and from different. Uh, Ethnicities, white, black, or for so there's that chance for us to
mhm,
experiment and experience different filmmakers, not the same ones. So definitely, it's going to be interesting. A film from Tracy Deer. So we have five. We have our five categories for the movie loot. We have a film from an African American director. We have a film nominated for Best Picture or Best International Feature in the upcoming Oscars. We have a film from Vincente Minelli, a film set in prehistoric times, and we have a film from Tracy Deer. That's our assignment for the month. Are you up for it, Brian?
I am up for it. Let's do this.
Definitely. All right, it's on. What will happen now is that we will have what's left of February and March to watch five films, those five films to fit those criteria. And at the end of the month, me and Brian, not at the end of the month, probably mid March, uh, me and Brian will meet again to talk about this loot of films of what we watched and what we thought about it. Brian, it was great to have you here again, and we'll definitely meet again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait.
So thanks to everybody for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode. We're still catching up a bit, but a week or two ago we dropped the holiday loot episode where I talk about the films I saw back on December, and I also do a bit of a retrospective on 2023 of the podcast. Before that, we released the closing loot with Pete from Middle Class Film Class, where we talk about closing scenes, our favorite closing scenes. We also have a couple of episodes that are in the process of being edited or recorded. So stay tuned for anything and everything while I catch up. Other than that, follow us on Twitter at TMML2021. We're on Blue Sky at The Movie Loot, and me personally at TIFCGT on both platforms. That's where I'm most active. I'm also trying to be more active, a bit more active on Facebook. So you can look for The Movie Loot there as well. Brian, where can people follow you and check out your work?
The main website is sonic-cinema.com. You'll find my print reviews, blogs, podcasts, some of my music, links to my music there. My all my socials are linked there as well. Still on Twitter, at Scuttle Lemur, SKUTLELEMUR. Um, Also at Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads. I occasionally post links there. I do have a Sonic Cinema movie group out on Facebook as well, where I post my reviews. But yeah, I mean, it's a basically anywhere and everywhere you can pretty much find me there. But Sonic Cinema is the main place to go for all my stuff.
Yeah, and definitely, like I said, I'm going to include all the links so anybody that's interested in following Brian or checking out his work can find that easily. Also, remember to rate, review the movie Loot wherever you listen. That's one of the ways to support us, and it's obviously free. Rate and review Brian Sonic Cinema podcast and website. So let's have a good night and let's grab the loot. And